Hello guys. Whoa, what is going on there? Oh, trying to get the camera a little bit more in the center, a little higher. Okay. So last night we were talking about science and spirituality and how they're really complementary systems that are, erroneously, the opinion of a lot of people is that they're mutually exclusive, and I think this is very, very bad for both. In fact, it's terminal, basically, because I think that no matter what terrain we're navigating, whether it's metaphysics or physics, we need to use the same skill set that we would use to navigate the material world, in order to really come to truth. And I think that a lot of people feel that it's not really possible to really ascertain the truth. And I don't think that's correct exactly. I mean, there are limits to what we can know, but we can do better than people generally are doing. Religion obviously has totally failed us. Our political systems have failed us, and even quantum physics has kind of failed. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But I reviewed the video where I got this information from yesterday, and it's not exactly clear to what extent quantum physics has sort of broken down, and it's not certain yet. So I'm not going to talk as much about that because I don't want to, I want to know my song well before I start singing, right? And then also, we're going to talk about proof, absolute proof, that consciousness does not originate in the brain. And we're going to tie that into the fact that the only thing that really seems to exist in the universe are fields. There actually are no particles. But let's back up a little bit and just kind of get our bearings as to where we're going and why. 2022 is set to be one of the most monumental years in human history. We are watching the old world die, in my opinion. The political systems, you look out into the landscape now and you see people jumping from the left to the right, kind of understandably, and from capitalism to socialism, from socialism to communism, all these ism-schisms games, right? And none of these systems are, they're all inadequate, and they're all traps, just like all the religions, right? With the exception of maybe Hinduism. That was another thing I was reviewing. Of all the major religions, I think that one really it's almost just a spiritual system. It's really interesting, and it's so complex that I almost don't even want to speak about it, because I think that without actually being a devotee and really committing to study, it's very difficult to understand. But for example, one of the reasons I'm always talking about how religion is bad, aside from the oppression of freedom of expression and freedom of choice. New world is worse than the older. Well, no. And here's the thing, Fernand, it's not. It's absolutely not. It's just this transitional period has a lot of chaos and stuff. And I'm going to explain, what we have to do is remember the Kabbalion's lessons, right? The pendulum swing, okay? And if you look throughout the last however many decades, since let's just go back to the 1950s. 1950s, we had the communist scare. We had a very shallow, boring, obedient, bland, racist, and totally artificial, right? Like, people pretended like they were, you guys have probably seen Leave It to Beaver reruns, okay? And then what happened? The pendulum swang way further to the left. and towards freedom and freedom of expression. Psychedelic drugs exploded. Rock and roll music became a huge thing. But then what happened after that? As the 70s went on into the 80s, the drug war heated up and heated up and heated up. And there was more and more and more acceptance of fascism. The people were obedient. They were all on cocaine. They were spraying shit tons of hairspray into their hair to the point where the hole in the ozone layer and you know, they thawed guar out in Antarctica, and they tried to, guar came and tried to destroy America and all that stuff. If you're not a guar fan, that went right over your head. But you see what I'm saying? This process is always happening. And so the further to the left that we swing, the further to the right we're going to swing. And it just always will go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And you know, it is true that if there's enough momentum on this pendulum, it could potentially start to spin all the way around, like, you know, those boats at the carnivals. But you know, at the same time that there's more fascism, there's more acceptance of fascism, there's, you know, more idiots, I think, than ever. It's literally because we are achieving higher and higher levels of consciousness. We are, and also, you know, we had a swing back to the left in the early 2000s. And if you really look at the situation holistically, we have, you know, in some ways there's more freedom, acceptance of psychedelics. Laws are changing in a lot of places that you can possess and even distribute psychedelics. In Oregon, just about any drug, I think, you can actually sell. And it's not about drugs to me, it's about personal freedom. So I don't know that we should really be concerned that we're heading into a totalitarian fascist state that's going to be permanent. We see this pendulum swing throughout, you know, American history, and this is why we have to understand spirituality as a science. It's so that we know, we can predict the course of mankind, and we can anticipate the cycles in our own lives. And I think that, you know, the knowledge, for example, of the pendulum swing, it keeps you from really being too afraid that things are going to move too far in any direction, because this is how the universe achieves homeostasis and how it maintains its balance. And so there is work that we need to do, however, and I think that being more willing, more brave, more vocal, more tactful, more subtle in our efforts to combat the existence at all of religion, for example. If you saw my, you know, Christianity is Evil live stream the other day, you've already heard this, but, you know, it's important to this topic as well, and that is that you have right-wing Christians, for example, like really fundamentalist Christians that are always talking about how the epitome of evil are these Satanists that are kidnapping and murdering children, even though there's not one single shred of evidence really that that's ever happened. I mean, there's a few kids that were kidnapped by cults and stuff for sure, but you know, for the record, Christians have done more damage to children that's documented than anyone. So, you know, it's kind of a weird kettle calling the pot black or something kind of thing. But the best example of it is that they say this and then they turn around and they worship a God that committed blood sacrifice of an innocent, right? So if you consider that that level of cognitive dissonance is routine in our society, it should be horrifying. And that's a really extreme case, but we're talking about a constituency that makes up a very large, or a demographic that is a very large constituency, particularly I think in the United States. Yeah, well, everyone should be. I mean, if these religions did what they were supposed to do, we would not be under these circumstances. And this is, one of the things I'm pointing to as evidence that we don't have any systems. People keep doing this thing where they jump from one box to another box to another box, looking for respite, looking for an answer, looking for a solution in all of these systems that have just failed everyone already before, everywhere that they've been implemented. And the reality is that, for example, socialism is not just bad, and it's definitely not true that every country that's ever been socialist has just failed. Usually, the socialist countries that fall apart have something the U.S. wanted, for one thing. But, all of these systems generally are destructive when they're pure. When you have, pure capitalism without enough socialism, then you have an imbalance and you end up with the United States. And if you have pure socialism or pure communism, but the reality is that if we are able to extract the best components from all of these different systems, just as with the different spiritual traditions, this sort of syncretic approach to finding the parts of all of these things that work and then combining them so that we have a new thing that can transcend all the old ones. This is impeded, this process, by the fact that everyone that has been brainwashed into one of the systems thinks that all the other systems are evil. So, this ability also to hold the kind of cognitive dissonance that allows you to worship a God that you believe has done the most evil thing that you can define. Also, it will allow you to live in a capitalist system that has socialist fire department, police, education, roads. You know what I mean? It's not really, there's not that there's no socialism in the United States. And so, this is also the fact with science. And doing research for this live stream the other day, I really, it's very good to question yourself. People need to get better at this. You need to put all of your ideas through the introspective microscope to the best of your ability. And it's difficult to do this also because trusting yourself to be objective about your own stuff is difficult. You can get good at it, but politics of facade. Well, yeah, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, it is a facade, but we're not talking about politics. We're talking about systems and how to create new ones. The puppeteering that we see on the television has got nothing to do with any kind of solution, of course. Oh, there's a lightning bug here. Okay, so when I was doing research for the science angle of this, I was thinking, well, maybe my criticisms of science, and it's not the scientific process that I'm talking about. It is the attitude and the dogma of the scientific community that I'm criticizing. Because, observation and experiment as pure science, questioning reality. This is the same as metaphysics and philosophy. It's a good thing. And rigorous scientific analysis has yielded tremendously useful stuff throughout human history. It's the social engineering that has rendered those accomplishments toxic and destructive, and it's that pendulum swing. It is the reason that so few people are really successful is that there is a tendency, because we're just expressions of the energy of the universe, to cancel out all of our advancement with its opposite, right? This is the kind of deep mystical secret that real spirituality is. That's why spirituality is liberating. People get this wrong. Spirituality doesn't mean that you just become awake and then everything gets easier and more interesting. It gets more interesting if you wake up. But the real truth is that you have to do things and work on your liberation by integrating knowledge and cultivating mindfulness. It's not as automatic as a lot of people would like to think. And so, but the thing is with science, I was watching this video of a physicist who was also an ordained Tibetan monk by the Dalai Lama. So he's a theoretical physicist and a Buddhist. And so there was another physicist present who was a total material, he believed that the particles that we have discovered tell the entire story of the universe, and that there is nothing more fundamental than quarks and muons and the fields that they actually are. These particles don't actually even exist. You guys are going to love that when we get there. Physics has kind of broken down, and another interesting thing about science is that they tend to backpedal to ideas that are hundreds of years old that they were laughing at, and then just put a new name on it. The way Aleister Crowley said this actually is that science is always rediscovering odd scraps of magical wisdom and making a great fuss about its cleverness. And it's absolutely true in this case. But what I noticed is that this physicist was not really that intelligent. And I think that a lot of people are really intimidated by this idea that these physicists and other types of scientists are so intelligent that their work is so incomprehensible that we have no business even questioning them because their minds are so much greater than ours. And when the other physicist, who was also a Buddhist monk, started to talk, the responses from this materialist physicist were extremely one-dimensional and very basic. He did not have the intellectual capacity to make really subtle distinctions and to understand that you could actually have something akin to spirituality without invoking woo and having to override natural law. And it was really remarkable to hear him say, he actually said, the energy that constitutes your consciousness is not going anywhere. It will always be here. And, so there's no afterlife. And I thought, how is that even logic? How, you know what I mean? It didn't even really make sense. What he was saying is that there is nothing there that would retain your individual characteristics. The things that make you would not be retained, and they would disappear into the ether. But it's like he had contradicted his own assumptions, at least to the extent that he had offered a possibility that could be interpreted as at least circumstantial evidence that there could be life after death. And he just chose to make one interpretation. So it really just watching this really kind of gave me more confidence that these people don't really know what the fuck they're talking about. And when I say that they're in a way, and when I say that they're trapped in an ontological box, that science has engineered blind spots and these tendencies to use perceptive selection or selective perception and other psychological devices to sort of engineer their concept of reality in the universe, they are definitely guilty of it. It was really, really obvious watching this physicist talk to this monk who was also a physicist. And so, let's talk about how physics actually, when a scientist is wrong, they do something that your narcissistic personality disorder girlfriend, or when science is wrong, they do this NPD thing where they don't admit they were wrong. They just recontextualize, reframe, or relabel what they were saying. And so, when I was growing up, if you mentioned the ether, people would laugh like, oh, ha, ha, ha. There was this old bullshit idea that there was an ether. And, I am almost curious how many more people we would have if it wasn't for the Baphomet picture. Because I keep seeing them pop on, and I always promote these videos in like new agey groups and stuff. And I'm sure, I wonder if it wouldn't be worth it in the interest of getting this message to more people to just take it down. But I hate that. I hate it. That people are just I feel like maybe, you know, those people aren't really worthy of, you know what I mean? Like waking up or whatever. It's just this. Anyways, let's move right along with our ether conversation because I watched another video last night where this physicist was talking about how physics has kind of failed. Um, and the failure specifically has to do with the Large Hadron Collider and the fact that all of these theories of theoretical physics, and we're not talking about basic fundamentals, we're not saying that there are no electrons, we're not saying that there are no atoms, um, we're not saying there are no quarks. What we are saying is that the search for a more fundamental reality or substance beyond that, that has been, you know, all of these physicists have been super confident that they were on the right track, that all of these things existed, and it turns out that none of it was verifiable with this $5 billion machine that they had constructed. And so now what they want to do is build a $10 billion machine so that they can probably fail to confirm a bunch of theories that are more than likely wrong. And what he was describing is basically that there really are no particles. So when I said that, yes, there actually are electrons, in a way that's not really true. And the ether does exist, and they have just relabeled it. And it was really interesting to hear him describe these fields as this liquid-like substance that permeates the entirety of the universe. And if he hadn't put it that way, I may not have made the correlation with well, everything about it can't be wrong because we're able to use it in technology, and we can smash particles together and we get the results that we expect. So it's not all wrong, or else we wouldn't be able to do these experiments that have results that are consistent with theory. But apparently some of it is wrong. So it was just really interesting to hear him put it that way, that, you know, he basically said the ether is there. And so we have this regression at the cost of billions and billions of dollars, and it's going to go further down the rabbit hole, you guys. Hang in there, because one of my ayahuasca visions of this central spirit that we could think of as source, surrounded by these sort of 12 like zodiac, but they're like archetypes. So they are sort of like this sundial, and wherever the light emanates, it's like it refracts through that filter, and that determines the archetype of consciousness. That's why we just have, like, you know, these certain different archetypal personalities, and there's 12 of them, and there's 12 signs of the zodiac. There is a correlation to all of that in quantum physics that actually is definitely correct. And it has to do with these 12 fields that are actually one field. And also the Trinity shows up again as the three forces that are divided then into four. And when I talk about it, if you've seen the ayahuasca video where I described this vision, it's exactly what I was talking about. And I just heard about this for the first time last night, at least in this context. So what I'm getting at here is that we have spent billions and billions of dollars. We have a lot of our best minds scribbling gibberish equations on blackboards, racking their brains trying to figure this stuff out. And all they've really done is confirm things that mystics have been saying for thousands of years. That is the only meaningful consequence, other than death and destruction, massive explosions, innovation of new weaponry. That's the only consequence. That physics has confirmed the existence of the ether. Entanglement has proven the assertion of the Buddha that everything is connected. And, you know, much, much, much beyond the expectations, I think, of people that believed the words of the Buddha, that everything was connected. I think that in general, before the discovery of entanglement, people probably thought of the connection of everything more in terms of, the way that trees will use bacteria to communicate with each other, and this sort of network of intelligence and cooperation. But to find out that electrons are actually connected no matter how far away they are and responding instantaneously, even though it's faster than the speed of light and all that. It's like physics has served a purpose in that it has revealed to people that can't spend years meditating that these things that these mystics have been saying are even more true than their followers had probably anticipated, which is a tremendous contribution. When I say that we have spent billions of dollars and all we've done is uncovered the confirmation of what mystics have been saying for thousands of years, it's not that I mean that there's no utility or value to it, because there is. Everything does happen for a reason, but I think at this juncture, we need to pay special attention to the implications of these revelations in physics. And the ultimate irony is that the greatest occasion of science and mysticism dovetailing may very well be the observer effect, which we're not 100% certain about. But here's the thing. We talked last time about the double slit experiment and how a lot of people's interpretation of it is that the pattern changed because of the observer's expectation, and that's not really, that's not what most physicists think, and that's not really even, there's really nothing to suggest that, but yeah, well, man, I mean, I do need to expand my audience, but and I really do think that's got a lot to do with it. I mean, people have said stuff like they get on and then they're like, hey, that doesn't help, It's like, but you're right. I mean, obviously I'm not gonna do it. But I haven't been demonetized. It's difficult for me to get these videos out there. And do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe. Support us on Patreon if you can. We also have the Zelle, PayPal, and Cash App. And we get no money for doing this, so if you appreciate the content and would like it to continue, we did get hacked this month and all of our money was taken, every last cent. So we really do appreciate your support. But so what I'm saying is that the ultimate example of science and mysticism really meaningfully dovetailing, and I was actually able to sit down in person with a young undergraduate in physics at my mom's funeral, weirdly I guess, right before it, and have this conversation to make sure that my layman's interpretation is not infested with or infected with Galen-Kruger. And, I was like, so let me get this straight. Let me make sure I understand. It sounds to me like, okay, no, let's finish describing the experiment. I'm sorry. So, because of the controversy around the double slit experiment, whether or not it's actually consciousness that plays some kind of role in the outcome, there was another experiment done by Dan Rader, who is a parapsychologist who graduated from Harvard. Parapsychology, of course, is not really one of the most respected fields in science. But he does have a Harvard education, and the experiment got us Sigma 5 rating, which is the best rating you can get from Harvard for scientific protocol. So it has been validated, and basically people that had a lot of experience with meditation were more able to influence the outcome of an experiment involving, I guess it was photons, and large groups of people are exponentially more capable of having an influence. So there is some role of consciousness on the outcome of, or the behavior of subatomic particles. And so now, this is where we get to the really crazy stuff, because There are some physicists that suspect that, well, actually, no, this is universal. The probability, so particles are in a probability cloud and then they're observed and they decide what they're going to do. That's the observer effect in a nutshell. And so, and this is also, you know, one of the reasons why I discourage people from believing stuff, because you collapse all these possibilities into an actuality, and then you've dissolved all of these possibilities, and so it's limited the parameters of what's available to you in terms of experience. And so, if this is true, physics has proven the existence of God. And the ultimate irony of it is that, and when I'm using the term God loosely, what I'm saying is that consciousness had to have preceded order if the observer effect is correct. Because if nothing had observed the chaotic energy in the primordial stew in the moments either preceding the Big Bang or immediately afterwards, there would never have been order. And so that's what I explained to this undergraduate from, oh God, it was one of the Ivy League schools. And she said, yeah, that's literally what a lot of us think, that there had to be an observer in the first place. So, you know, that's not Galen-Kruger, you are understanding, you know, and so, you know, that is a tremendous thing, and it's an incredible irony that physics and science is supposed to take the spirit out of the universe and reduce it all to, you know, deterministic matter and causality and what it actually did at the end of the day, it's looking like, is proven that there must have been at least some kind of conscious awareness that preceded creation, otherwise it wouldn't be here. And, you know, for me, I would just say, duh, like, really, did we have to spend $100 billion on particle acceleration chambers to figure this out? No, you could have asked any mystic in any temple or cave anywhere in the world, and you know, we already had the answers to these questions. Also, interestingly, in my own visions prior to study, and in a lot of the different systems of mysticism, the moment that nothing became something was the moment that it became conscious. In Hebrew, the word is a heye. I am just had this sudden awareness that it existed, and that was consciousness, this immaterial spark that catalyzed the process of creation and sent it all cascading into multitudinous and duality and all of this stuff that we're now living with. And so it kind of looks like physics has confirmed it. And so also on this subject, you know, I was speaking about how there are these 12 archetypes that emanate from the central spiritual point of origin, right, in a circle, just like the zodiac. And we have the correlation of the 12 forces in physics, but those are not the fundamental forces. There are 3 fundamental forces. And then there are also 3 fundamental constituent parts that make up an electron. Up quark, a down quark, and the other name is escaping me at the moment. Maybe it's just a down quark, up quark, and a gluon or something. Anyways, the point is that this idea of the Trinity and these fundamental underlying structural, numerological consistencies, this is why they're there. And you know, like I was saying in the last live stream, this is why people believe in a lot of the religions. All of these fundamental truths are just draped in myth. And so people know, because we're made of this stuff. We are constructed in accordance with the Fibonacci sequence and the golden mean. You know, we And I think it's deeper than that. Our intuitive ability to recall the reasons and the process of the creation of the universe and of ourselves, is the more science does its work, the more evident it becomes that we don't need it to tell us anything. You don't need anyone to tell you anything. Gnosis is real. You can come to knowledge through non-conventional means that is absolutely legitimate. But you have to have respect for the process, and this is where things break down for a lot of people in the modern era, because we don't really have a lot of good teachers. We don't have shaman running around everywhere. I mean, we do down here in South America, but most of them are not good anymore. The influence of capitalism has corrupted damn near everything. And so, unfortunately, one of our plans was to go and continue working with Orani people, for example, in Coca. And the feedback that I'm getting is that would not be wise. And they have basically been bought by the oil companies, and we definitely have our work cut out for us in terms of affecting change. It's going to be difficult. So, but we don't have the respect for, the mystic and the shaman and the magician in the hermetic sense of what a magician is. And so what we have is a lot of people with ego inflation and Galen-Kruger, mystical Galen-Kruger. Like, it's not just physics and astronomy and all of these sciences that you can have Galen-Kruger, politics. It's also mysticism is probably the number one, metaphysics, spirituality. Galen-Kruger is huge, and the influence of, the fact that it is now cool to be spiritual, and also that it allows people to escape the matrix. I know a lot of girls who have become like life coaches and psychedelic integration people that have no clue what they're doing with their own lives. They have not dealt with all their own shit to the point where they are just a tragic disaster. And they are in no wise qualified to help someone tie their shoes. And we have people that are coming out of medicine circles looking for guidance from these people, because anyone can just decide that they think they're qualified, and there's no certification, there's no testing, there's nothing but just some person decides that they're able to do this thing. And the same thing happens with channeling. People that are just thinking believe that they're channeling all this stuff, and it's really easy to detect the ones that actually know they're not channeling, I think, because like, for example, today I was scrolling through TikTok and I saw a girl who, is channeling messages for people, and I'm like, let me guess, it's 100% positive, and it's all stuff that people would pay you to tell them, right? And absolutely, all of it. Every one of her videos is just all stuff that people will pay you to tell them. And because that is a circumstance in the spiritual ecosystem, it's very, very, very corrupted and corroded, because he who speaks the truth has few friends. People don't really want to hear the truth. They just want to pay someone to tell them what they already think or something that they want to believe. And so, but the main thing here is that people just don't really understand that, spirituality is actually difficult. It is complicated. People believe that it's very simple, and that it doesn't require mind, just get rid of your thoughts. And the problem is that in our culture, we have had such a complicated and toxic confluence of influences and forces that we are not, where it ends usually depends on where it begins, right? So, sure, if you were like some Asian rice farmer or whatever that had just been out in the fields all day, and then you went to the Buddhist temple, then, it's real simple. Just sit and meditate and you're good, right? but upper middle class Jewish American princess from the Jersey Shore, it's not going to be that simple. And so we actually have to really cultivate and put energy and time into psychology and understanding physics and all of this stuff. So this is basically, long story short, what I'm saying is that we have to have a holistic, integrated approach where all of these things are constrained to work together and in our favor. And people are not doing a very good job of it. They're really not. It's the narrative adoption, I know I talk about that a lot and I don't want to be too redundant, but that is really, people will jump out of the mainstream and then they just, I believe all of this stuff now because I'm spiritual. That's not a valid process. It really isn't. Like, you don't just like look and say, okay, well, what do spiritual people believe? Okay, there are chakras, reincarnation, what else am I supposed to think? That's really what most people do. And it's no better than just being a born-again Christian. It's not. Or an atheist or whatever. It's just... Okay, so let's talk about one of the most important areas, though, where science has been totally wrong, and there is no explanation for this other than something I believed my whole life, basically, that consciousness is a field. And actually, I don't believe that anymore, and I think the reason that we can't find it is because it's not a field exactly. It is produced by the interaction of various fields. It's not a fundamental force, which is what a lot of people want to think. I don't know why I think this, honestly. It's not like I have a scientific basis for it or anything, but my intuition is that consciousness arises from the interplay of different fields. So, oh man, we're losing people just as it's really about to get interesting. This is like the best part. I always do that, though. I save the really good stuff for later. And I guess that means that the real troopers, the diamond hand holders, but honestly, I was stalling a little bit to see if we get a few more people, because this is awesome, and it's 100% verifiable, and the implications of it are truly, truly, worldview revolutionizing. Consciousness does not originate in the brain. And if you are awake, or however you like to think of it, you may say, well, no shit, we already know that, but we have proven it. And the reason that we have proven it, or the instance that gave rise to the occasion of this proof, is that there is a condition where people have been born with no brain. And usually they are mentally disabled. They're drooling and they can't really speak right and correctly. And but there have been a few occasions, and bear in mind that we obviously don't know how many of these people there are, but the first individual that was discovered that was fully functional and has no brain, the only brain they have is a sac of cerebral fluid at the base of their spine, or at the top base. I don't know, if you don't have a brain, I guess it's the base. So the end of the brain stem just has a sac, no brain at all, none. And this guy was a doctor, and he went to get a brain scan because he had a headache, and they're like, you don't have a brain at all. They scanned him and he had no brain. So this is a fully functional doctor. And since then, there have been at least two other, this study or article that I read about this was like 20 years ago or something. So at the time of the publishing of this article, there were like only 3 cases of it that were known where the person was fully functional. So for example, the physicist from the video I was telling you about, the one that was totally material, his argument basically is that consciousness arises from brain activity. And so once the physical brain, yeah, it's a filter. Yeah, of course, poo-poo. And it's not just the brain that's a filter. I think there's, well, here's the thing though. It's not just a filter, because it is true that if you damage the brain, oftentimes people have serious problems. And most of the people that are born without brains are obviously not having a brain. But these cases of fully functional people, even a doctor that literally has no brain, even one instance of that totally overrides the assertion that the brain is where consciousness and thinking originates, period, end of story. It's absolutely not true. And we have documented proof of that at this point. So what is it? And this is another crazy thing for me on my journey of trying to figure all this stuff out. Like, a lot of my work is done internally. It's just, it's not even intentional. I'm just sitting around, and all of a sudden my brain will catch a train, and I have this way of thinking on like these 3 reels. I can actually visualize them sometimes. And so there's different layers of the process happening on these different tiers. And I don't know, anyways, the process is not important. What is important is that, my realization of this kind of stuff that I've been sharing with you guys, and you guys have been watching this all develop, if you follow the channel, and you should. So I've been talking about how sentient beings, consciousness, what it really is vectors of convergence of different fields, basically, electromagnetic fields in particular. And so turns out that particles aren't particles. Particles are vectors of convergence of different fields. They're like a little, as if, like if you like pull a little bit of blanket out and you put a rubber band around it, and you have this little knot or bump, and then you can still have the blanket open. That's what particles are. So it's, again, this idea of reflections that make up the totality of the universe. Because we are the same fundamentally as these particles, vectors of convergence for waves, and so I thought that was quite something. This assertion by physics now that there really aren't any particles, there are fields interacting with different ratios of engagement, I guess. So, in order to create, one particle, you have so much influence from the electromagnetic field and so much influence from one of the other 2 of the 3 for magnetic force, or I think we're talking about 12 fields when I talk about the 12. Yeah, 12 fields are the same as the 12 forces, because now in quantum theory there are only fields, so forces are fields. Force fields. The universe is made of force fields, and what's up, Tommy? Let's see, what else did we have here? Yeah, the doctor with no brain, and the fact that, okay, and then so that kind of messes with potentially with our understanding of reincarnation. um, because it kind of looks like it's just this. Okay, so if there are only these fields that make up reality, then obviously consciousness is some expression of the interaction of these fields, like I was saying, like in the beginning of this live stream. It really can't be anything else because that's all there is. And so this idea of consciousness as a field is basically verified by quantum physics, which may mean it means lump, I think, quantum, which is cute, I guess. Let me look at my description because I feel like I'm missing something really important here. No, I don't think so, actually. I mean, what really, we are having to accept is that we are suddenly out to sea. We are adrift in eternity without a compass, even, because all of our systems are proving to be inadequate, inoperable. What's going on? It's Purge. Yeah, I've been wondering what happened to you the last couple of streams. So, our political systems, our scientific systems, there's something I missed. The hypocrisy and the ability for collective entities to have cognitive dissonance, right? So I've seen studies that say two different things in psychology in the last year. For example, this is just one example. Study proves that people, when presented with new information, are able to revise their old thinking. Another study says, due to anchoring bias, people are not able to accept new information. So not only do we have these like revisions in physics where they're like, well, okay, it's not a particle, it's a point of density where fields are interacting. Well, okay, maybe the ether is real, but we're going to call it something else so we don't have to admit we're wrong. Well, whoops, the $5 billion Hadron Collider actually doesn't do anything, which is funny because remember everyone was saying they're screwing with time, they're causing the Mandela effect. It's like, well, no, guys, actually it doesn't do anything. So just stop running your mouths because it doesn't do anything. Our religions are obviously completely insane, right? We have the Christians saying that, the evilest people, what defines evil basically are people that would kill an innocent, blood sacrifice of innocent, and then worshiping a God that does that very thing, for example, right? What else has collapsed on us? I mean, our economic systems are obviously just constructs to empower a tiny little percentage of humanity at the expense of everyone else. Our sciences are useful, but they don't offer the kind of certitude that a lot of the proponents would assert. But perhaps more importantly, the reality that science wants to insist is valid in terms of total materialism and consciousness only being derived from the brain, it's obviously not true. So we find ourselves in a position where we are the first generation in history, as so far as we know, where we have this kind of perspective, access to this kind of technology, the experience and wisdom to analyze the pluses and minuses, the strengths and weaknesses of all of these political paradigms, all of these different political systems, economic systems. We have the tools, the insight to create a new paradigm based on all of the best constituent elements of all of these parts. We have new minds that are capable of performing scientific analysis and scientific experiments and having the genius and the capacity to innovate and to explore and to ask new questions. But minds that also know, for example, that there are doctors that don't have a brain and therefore consciousness does not arise from the brain. And it seems to me that we are like half a slap away from coming to, and the convergence of these apparently disparate systems is inevitable, and it's drawing very, very close. Because how long can it be before a leading physicist happens to read this article and realizes that people have consciousness that don't have brains? Thank you so much, Joanne. I really appreciate being appreciated, especially after having been demonetized. And I'm sorry I do this plug so much, but I have to because we get no money from YouTube or anywhere really. Actually, I got in a lot of trouble in 2020. My Facebook I have a notice on my Facebook that says that my posts are going to be buried for at least 90 days. And then they gave the reasons, and they said because I was posting false information, and it was like stuff about intelligence. Seriously, like I wish you guys could see it. It's crazy. It's not like it wasn't stuff about COVID or vaccines or any of this really controversial hot button shit that could get people in trouble potentially. It was just about intelligence and stuff, and they're burying my posts. So promoting the videos is very difficult for me now, and the live streams, because in the groups they're burying everything in people's feeds. They are when they demonetize a channel, they bury the videos as well. So share them please for me, because if you guys share them, people will actually see it maybe. But so yeah, we really do appreciate support. We really, really need it. We were just robbed for $10,000, which was everything we had. So there are options in the chat and in the description. So what was I talking about? It was pretty important. We were tying this all together. And I think this is one of the reasons, obviously, that, yeah, I know, Tommy, it's true that they have fucking buried me. And I've been trying to launch a new channel, and they're burying these topics now. So, whereas even before I was monetized, before 2020, I would get a few hundred views on every video. And then when I was monetized, it jumped up to like 1,000. And then now, when I put videos on the new channel, they don't get any views, like one. Seriously, like one. So I don't know that I'm going to be able to really become a voice on social media that has any kind of like substantial following. The one thing I can probably do, and you guys can help me out with this actually, is share channels, medium ones mostly probably, that I might be able to collaborate with. That's probably, yeah, I'm sure I was talking about brains and consciousness, but more specifically, oh, right. I'm just saying that I think that we are at a point where the mass adoption of these, of this holistic perspective or ontology that is able to integrate a spiritual understanding, because when I say spiritual, it's got nothing to do with religion. Some people, like the physicist from the video the other day, have trouble even conceiving of the fact that you can be spiritual and not believe. You can be an atheist and be spiritual. I'm an atheist in a way. Like I don't think that there's like a God, like an individual, you know, like the fairy tale Bible God. I don't believe that exists. So if that makes me an atheist, I guess I'm an atheist. But I do think that it is undeniably obvious that consciousness preceded the existence of the universe, even, and that's consistent with. Well, please put that in the description, because I don't know if I can, or in the, oh, you guys can't comment during the damn it. Well, maybe if you don't mind emailing to me or something, there's an email in the description. I just don't know if I can access. Sometimes I can't access the chat after the. Oh, because if I don't turn the replay on. But yeah, if you guys know other people that you watch that I might be able to collaborate with, that might help me overcome the censorship and burying of my posts and whatnot. And I think, you know, I'm offering a powerful message here that I don't really see represented anywhere else. And I think that, you know, if I have any particular talent, I'm very good at showing people how it is that you can have spirituality without having to negate any kind of aspect of science, and vice versa. That science is actually sort of groping in the dark without any kind of, it has a crisis of purpose, right? There are branches of science that may have a lot of a sense of purpose. You know, healthcare has the purpose of making money for big pharma, and you know, that sort of things. And then particle physicists, what are they really doing if not trying to create like the ultimate weapon? So, but you see what I'm saying here. We actually, for the first time in human history, we have incontrovertible proof that consciousness does not originate in the brain. In fact, Paul Stamets just announced that they have conclusively proven that mycelium is conscious. So now we have an organism that has no brain that is conscious. And then also, don't we have proof that trees communicate? Yes, we do. And I'm pretty sure that some sort of fundamental consciousness is required in order for there to be any kind of communication. Now, I might have to redact that because chemical communication is not necessarily the same thing. But yeah, Paul Stamets has declared that they have proven that mycelium is conscious and aware. It's able to recognize spirals. It can deal with mazes. So sorry, science. Consciousness does not originate in the brain, and so since you guys say that energy cannot be destroyed and can only be transformed, and there's nothing but unified fields of energy, that means that our consciousness is eternal. And so, like, are you guys not looking at your own data or something? Because it kind of looks like you guys have proven the mystics that you've been laughing at for centuries correct. And like I was saying, I don't think we can continue on this course for much longer. And I'm not talking about the inevitability of a climax to the chaostrophe that has engulfed the planet. Well, they can be afraid the truth will spread all they want, but I really don't think that all the scientists and stuff are into it, are in on it, like a lot of people think. I think that they're just indoctrinated, and, you know, they have been trained rigorously to, you know, scientific protocol starts with certain assumptions, and that is where the inadequacy of the of science comes from. Um, they're starting on certain assumptions, and confirmation bias is prevalent throughout scientific protocol. There are certain fundamental assumptions that they're making that preclude certain types of observations, which totally invalidates their processes. Right? You can't do that. You cannot claim objectivity and then work with certain assumptions and preclude certain possibilities just because of the nature of those possibilities not fitting into your ontological goggles. That's not what science is for. It's not there to funnel all the phenomenology down into a certain ontological structure. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it was to understand the universe and to make utility of the constituent elements of the universe. And the reductionist perspective is very limited, obviously. So, like Fernando said at the beginning of the live stream, that the new world is worse than the old one. At this juncture, it certainly does appear to be that way. And there is failure. That possibility exists. But it is also possible that it could go our way. And I think it's even likely. And, I don't know how many times in my life I have failed to anticipate positive developments because, it was 1989 and you have Reagan and the drug war, and then you have Bush Sr. and Bush Jr. and the Patriot Act and all of this stuff. And we're thinking, we're doomed, and then it swings the other way for a while to a certain extent, and people are suddenly allowed to grow pot all over the place, and that sort of momentum towards freedom and access to these sacraments that allow us to develop a new kind of consciousness and actually catalyze our learning abilities and expand our creativity and give us access to parts of the brain that we don't normally use. You guys also would do well to consider how new a lot of this is, and the fact that the ramifications and implications of a lot of the studies have just started to sort of overcome the biases of a lot of people. For example, there's a lot of bias-based resistance because people have anchoring bias, for example, that they were brought up, they were the message that psychedelics were a bad thing that made people insane and they were extremely dangerous and all this stuff. That narrative has been running since the early 1960s, and so even though the research has come out to show incredible things, I think that it's a lot of people will have trouble wrapping their heads around this stuff, but the reality is that we have done brain scans that show electrical activity in parts of the brain where they're never, ever, 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 under any circumstances, not even in the most advanced meditator. They've done brain scans on, monks meditating and whatnot. Not even those guys. So what does that mean? It's kind of odd, isn't it, that people that take psychedelics, going all the way back to, the times of Sir Walter Raleigh in the jungle, reports of the precognition and remote viewing and telepathy. I've experienced it with low doses of mushrooms even, where it was absolutely undeniable. The girl was a mile away, and she knew every single thought, word for word, that had gone through my head for an entire half an hour, and every single thing I had done. The type of dog I had pet, that I went to the car and didn't have the keys, and I had a tear running down, everything. There's no way she was guessing. No fucking way. And even if she had been there, there's no way that she could have, even if she was watching me somehow, and hiding, like stalking, if we're going to push it to the absolute, most extreme possibility, she still couldn't have known the shit that was going through my head because it had nothing to do with anything I was doing or certain, you know what I mean? It's just not possible that it wasn't actual telepathy. Okay, so isn't it a bit odd that we have all these capacities of consciousness that people report engaging with psychedelics, and we have electrical activity in parts of the brain that we never use otherwise? I mean, this stuff is kind of like, it's really obvious where it's all heading. And then on top of that, we have the ability to enhance inter-region communication in our brains. So we have conscious and subconscious bridges forming. This is a circumstance that has never before been occurring in people that are using psychedelics with this kind of focused intentionality, which is another huge difference between now and the 60s, right? I have been describing since I was 15 years old the 60s as the tremors before the actual earthquake event, which is now. And I've been saying since I was a teenager that what is coming is going to make the 1960s look like a frat party. And I was intentionally emphasizing the shallow, debauched pointlessness. And I'm not saying that the 1960s were entirely just shallow debauchery. That was the 70s and 80s. But compared to what's coming now, yes, they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know how to use LSD. They had limited experience with meditation. They had limited access to experienced teachers. They had limited access to mystical literature. They had way more indoctrination. Most of them had snapped out of it in their early 20s, right? So, at this juncture, we have entire generations that have not really been influenced by the propaganda machine in the way that these earlier generations did. They don't have the sexual oppression. They don't have the stigma regarding the use of psychedelics and other drugs. And people my age too. So we have a lot of circumstances that have evolved in our favor since the 1960s tremendously. And not only that, but as I was saying, the psychedelic tools that, on top of all the other stuff I outlined, they're also capable of causing the brain to rebuild itself at a rate that is like just absurd. It's insane. One of the researchers at Princeton was asked to summarize what he thought of his experiments with the brain and psychedelics, and he's like, this is the most important discovery in human history, psychedelics in general. And that's coming from Princeton. I remember Harvard fired Timothy Leary for saying the same thing in 1958 or whatever it was, 62 or I'm not really sure. But you get what I'm saying, like they were firing people before, and now there's a Harvard psychedelics club. And we know how to use them to a degree that no one really back in the 60s knew, And people in the 1960s also weren't drinking ayahuasca. So I think that we are far more capable of revolutionizing the world and being able to look objectively without the kind of bias that our parents and grandparents had at systems like socialism and capitalism. And we have the open-mindedness, the intelligence, the drive. I mean, our extinction is a pretty good motivational factor. And we all like to be able to travel and to be free from the matrix. And so, we know what it is that we want, we know how to get it, and we need to just set about doing it. It's unfortunate that the world is so treacherous. We really, money, unfortunately, some circumstances in this world are dictated to us and not by us, and money is still power, and that circumstance will probably remain that way. And it's not entirely wrong, exactly. If the playing field was more fair, it would actually make sense, because you want the most intelligent people and the most creative people to have the most power and influence. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily exactly how the system is engineered. There is an element of that, otherwise it would be intolerable, and we wouldn't have a lot of the amazing things that have developed. But we know that we can do better and that we have to do better. and very, very rapidly. The ocean has like 90% of the life in the ocean from 1970 is gone. 90%. So, global starvation is a very real and imminent possibility, unless we're all eating lab-grown meat made by Bill Gates and company. We definitely have some issues to address. But I think that the title of the last live stream, miracles and molecules, right? I think that to negate the influence of fear, which is like an interference pattern that we don't want, we don't need. We need to be like a hollow tube to bring down fire from heaven, right? So we don't want anything in there that's not copacetic with our agenda. Fear just attracts bad things. So it's like the number one enemy. You're eternal. So what if you die or get thrown in a concentration camp? You'll be back. Don't worry about it. Do what matters and don't worry about. Just don't have any fear. Intelligence, sure. Caution, sure, but not fear. Well, again, poo-poo, I think we can rely on the pendulum swing. I know a lot of people have predicted a lot of things, and the thing about people that predict things is that they're wrong nearly 100% of the time. And when they are correct, it's usually only partially correct. Some of it's astonishing. Aldous Huxley basically anticipated the metaverse by 100 years. In 1933, he wrote about feelies, where people would go and attach things to their bodies in order to feel the 3D movies they were going to watch. And so now we have the metaverse where we can put sex toys on our organs and go and have sex with whatever porn star we want and actually feel it. And so people were also taking Soma, which was basically a benzodiazepine like Xanax to regulate their mood, and sexuality was very, very open. And so you could say that Aldous Huxley anticipated the future, although a lot of Brave New World was not correct. And 1984 by George Orwell, you could say the same thing. In 1984, there were microphones in people's houses. There were cameras in paintings of Big Brother. His eyes were actually watching you, I think. And so, they were just like now with our laptop eye always watching, and the microphone and our phone is always on, and Big Brother is always watching. And so, you could say that Orwell predicted a lot of things, but he didn't predict any of the stuff that was in Huxley's book, and it's the opposite. So, I think that the police state is here. It's been here for a long time, but one of the things that we always will probably contend with is that there are going to be microcosms within the macrocosm, and what is available to people within those microcosms is under their control to some extent. California is a pretty good example in certain areas of how even though the law is a certain way, the culture has determined that they're not going to, they're going to do things their way, and there's so many of them that after a while even the cops start to be complicit in it, and they allow the culture to determine its parameters, right? So, I think that is sort of the inevitable outcome, that if you are of a certain predisposition, you have a certain type of consciousness, you can go to certain places that are going to be conducive to the expression of that. And, hope for the worst, prepare for the rest, or hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and the rest is written, right? So, yeah, it's totally possible that we're moving into an absolutely totalitarian, fascist, crazy New World Order situation. But just in case we're able to take the reins, we have to be prepared to, and we have to know what our agenda is exactly what we're trying to create. Whether you're talking about the potentials for consciousness to influence the fundamental structure of the reality we experience, or or going into a plant medicine ceremony, focusing your consciousness on exactly the outcome. The first prerequisite of that is that you have to know what it is that you're after. And another way of thinking about it is in these systems like Aleister Crowley's, where your objective is to discover your true will and commit every breath, every thought, every deed to the realization of the expression of that will. One must first ascertain what that will is. So, in my opinion, our job now is to use these our analytical ability to see where is science incomplete, and find the complementary aspects of spirituality and integrate them with subtlety and concision and deliberate, focused, and fucking speed, because the hour is growing late. And also, to be able to forget, we have to examine our own biases and our own indoctrination and influence from our cultures and also from our surroundings, and really be able to lift ourselves up above it so that we can see everything for what it is. And we have to be able to offer all intelligent solutions to capitalism and socialism, and we have to figure out what that would actually look like and start to talk about it, to write about it, and we have to actually get about the work of creating a new world to the extent that we're capable. And I think that one of the most encouraging things we can realize is that the old systems were actually not that impressive. I think the average person feels kind of powerless because they think that, to conceptualize a political system or to become a physicist requires this monumental leap in intelligence that is so far beyond the average intellect. But I don't think that's actually true. And if you actually examine the systems that we have, the religions are so obviously dumb and insane. The political systems have totally failed, and they're not that intelligent. They're not holistic. They're not, you know what I mean? Like, our work is actually much easier than a lot of people think. And so we create this monumental opposition when our task is actually pretty simple. And if the truth can be told so as to be understood, it will be believed. So if we can format all of this stuff in a way that that it's presented well, it should be easier to prompt adoption. Yeah, I mean, I have no education either, and I can recognize when Nassim Haramein is making shit up, you know what I mean, for example. We have to watch out for that too, man. People really are capitalizing, unscrupulous people are capitalizing on people's lack of education, and really taking advantage of people that are open-minded but just don't know any better. And Nassim Haramein, I'm afraid to tell you or break your heart, but he's one of those people. I just happen to know enough theoretical physics that when I watched one of his videos, and at first I was with it, I was like, okay, the torus, like, this is all groovy. And there is the entropy vortices at the center of an atom, and this jives with my metaphysics that at the foundation of creation is nothing, right? And so the same is true of an atom. And mystics have always told us that everything is a reflection of this one thing. And the Jewish mysticism saying that the microcosm reflects the macrocosm. We have the Hermetic tradition telling us that as above, so below, right? So you would expect there to be correlations between the structure of an atom and the structure of creation. And these things are directly related in functionality anyways. So as it turns out, at the center of an atom, there is infinitely small nothingness. But if you think about the infinitely small aspect of this assertion, um, what does that mean? It sounds like nothing is eternal, which would mean that everything is nothing and nothing is everything. Like we have this, that's not even where I was going. That just happens to be one of the implications of this. I mean, in order to have infinite anything, it has to be the totality of everything. And that's something I think when people conceptualize infinity, they don't really realize the real implications of it. For example, in the Book of the Law, when it says that every number is infinite, right? There's no difference. They're the same. It's easy to take that for granted, but the reality is that okay, cool. Thanks a lot, Adam. That you can divide any number by itself and get infinity, right? Or is that my math is terrible? Or is it you divide one? How do you get infinity from a number? I can't remember the. It's funny, like I know about entropy vortices and stuff, but I like basic division is. um, no, that's one. So what is it? Do one of you guys? You have to know this. It's something very simple. I feel really dumb that I can't recall at the moment how this works. And all of my screens just vanished. What the hell's going on? I don't know if my computer crashed. Well, dang it, you guys. Yeah, I can't see the chat or anything. Okay, there we go. So, any of you guys know that? What? How is it that you or you divide? You can divide a number by something and get an infinite string of like decimal infinity, right? Um, and so that's another example of how the all is in the all, right? I mean, if something continues infinitely, it's everything. Like it's infinity is the limitlessness of everything. It's it's uh, it's another proof of the holographic nature of the universe. But what I was saying about this infinitely small um, entropy vortice at the center of an atom is that the only thing that Nassim Haramein says that I think could be correct is this idea that there's like a tiny black hole at the center of every atom, just as there's a big black hole in the center of every galaxy, right? So, man, what the hell is going on here? Are you guys even there? Yeah, you guys are still here, but something fucking whacked out is going on with my computer, and I can't see the chat. And this is that time of night where, you know, my brain is starting to collapse, and I need the interaction in order to have any kind of focus. So, let me see if I can get it back. Yeah, it's just so bizarre. It's like locked up. So, you know, the all is in the all. Infinitely small. I mean, what the hell even is that? What do they think they're saying when they? Oh, you know what? Another one that's really really fantastic is um, zeros of different orders of magnitude. That's a concept in mathematics. I can't believe I can't remember how it is that you divide numbers. It's something really simple. It's just a brain fart. Like, this is something everyone knows by elementary school, but I guess when you don't think about it for a couple of decades. Now the chat is okay. So here's new. All right. So just bear with me a moment. I mean, you guys have got to understand what I'm getting at. It seems really inevitable that the universe finally explained. Well, that's not hubristic or anything. But yeah, I mean, it's probably not untrue. It's not really that difficult, and this is another element of this that we really have to get better about, man. Like, not putting people on pedestals, not looking for people to follow. Like, you know, like the president complex, people are like, oh, he's my president, or I will honor him just because he's the president or whatever. And then if someone becomes enlightened, people want to like worship them and follow them around and do whatever they tell them. It's not that big of a deal, you guys. The most elevated consciousness that I have interacted with in my lifetime, I think, is basically what human beings would be like if they didn't have the influence of dominator culture and the indoctrination. It's really, you know, I'm not trying to minimize the value of anyone, but you understand what I'm saying. It should be the norm rather than the exception. And I think what we really all, a big part of the new mission in consciousness is that we all have to really start to honor our individuality, because homogeneity and conformity are such it's a standard. It's the golden standard of modern culture. And you know, like, you look on TikTok and you see that all these girls have learned how to make the identical expressions. They move the same way. You know, it's just this, like, it's clones and clones and clones and clones and clones and clones and clones. This is not what we want. And you don't want to find a religion and follow it. You want to have experiences, and you want to extract from those experiences knowledge. Anything worth knowing can't be taught. This is true. Anything worth knowing can't be taught. There's no way for you to attain the benefits of gnosis without having an internal process catalyzed. There's nothing you're going to read. There are things that will contribute to your development, but any real valuable spiritual development can only be derived from personal experience, right? You adopting a prepackaged belief system is totally meaningless. And it's why religions are not efficacious at making people better for the most part. Trying to follow a bunch of rules is very, very different from experiencing an actual transformation of being that results in a revolution of your conduct and your thought processes. 20% battery. If you guys have questions, you better get them going. And one more pitch, you guys. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon. Didn't I fix it? I thought I fixed it. Yeah, I fixed it. We're demonetized, so there are options for supporting in the chat and in the description. And I'm trying to change the world here, so help me out, man. We were down here trying to give back to indigenous communities because they've given us medicine that may allow us to save our culture, and in return, we're destroying their, so just thought it would be good to just go to the communities and just try to help them, give them money, and use my YouTube channel to try to raise some awareness and give them a little bit more of a voice. And people stole all of our money. So now we're stuck. I mean, can you imagine this? We're stranded at my in-laws' house, like, because some hacker wiped us out. Like, and it's not pleasant. I mean, I'm not trying to like put my shit on you or whatever, but we're definitely not happy about this. So help us out if you can, because man, we're really trying to do good work here. And basically, I'm trying to like wrap this all up by telling you that I think that even though it seems really daunting and next to impossible, let me get some tea. Actually, my voice is getting a little bit worn out. A lot of it worn out. Sending crypto is helpful. BNB in particular is helpful. Also, you guys, that's another thing. You know, we have to take advantage of cryptocurrency. I think all of us, like, this is something that, you know, I talk about how I lived outside of society my entire life, and it's true. And it's good in a way because that's, if I have a unique perspective, it has a lot to do with not having received the indoctrination, the social conditioning. I don't know what any of that is. And it really upsets me when people tell me that I'm trying to be edgy or something, because I'm not trying to be anything. I don't know what that is either. Never tried to be. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me that people do that. Yeah, that's Baphomet. You're just now noticing? Because I think like half of the people that come on, they see that poster and then they were gone immediately. Or maybe they just think I'm too rugged looking or something, and they just don't give it a chance. Well, yeah, because people don't really know. I think that that's what it's about. That we are here to experience the universe from a particular perspective, and that's it. That's our whole purpose. That's it. There's no greater purpose. There can't be any greater purpose. Uh-oh. Internet, maybe. Did I just lose the internet? No. Okay, I guess it's just my computer glitching out. Man, that's too bad. I like having the chat. Going on. Well, even though I don't know if you're there, I'll just keep talking as if I think you are. Basically, we have a chance of having an enlightened population, a better chance than we have ever had before in history. Oh, the cryptocurrency. Yeah, I was saying, you know, I did not pay any attention to money until the last few years, and at first, it wasn't necessity. I realized that if I was going to have a significant amount of influence, I needed to have a lot of money. And so that was what originally pushed me to start, you know, learning about finances and cryptocurrency and investment, and even studying like economics to an extent. Because I realized that if, you know, we're in this world, some of the rules are dictated to us and not by us. And one of those is that money is power. And so we need people that are spiritual to have money, because if, if the people that pursue power have no interest in spirit, and people that have interest in spirit have no interest in money, and money is power, then we have a serious problem, and we do have a serious problem. So You know, that's just my kind of double-edged way of saying, please support me and support yourself. Like really, really, really put a lot of energy. I would strongly encourage you. If you need my help, you know, you can get blocks of Zoom time, and I will tell you what to do. I turned $84 into like $2,500 in like a couple of weeks, just a few weeks ago, and we had a lot more than that by the time the hacker took all of our money. So you know, if you don't know what you're doing and need help, I'm totally willing to tutor you, and it's really important that we empower ourselves in that way. So I've been talking for an hour and a half, and my computer is bugging out. So, but that's it, you guys. Everything is a unified field. Consciousness is a field. Consciousness does not originate in the brain. Physics may be almost entirely wrong. All of their religions are bunk. And we have an obligation. This is the culmination of what I've been calling for decades the Phoenix process. We have an obligation to rise from the dust of all of that, using as our fuel the constituent elements of all of the rubble that did actually have utility and value to building a more meaningful future, one where the majority of people don't suffer from a crisis of purpose, where people know that their individuality is priceless, that they are an avatar of a universal mind, and that the universe's sole purpose is to create circumstances of potential for sentience to experience, because otherwise we would just be sitting around in eternity as nothingness, with nothing to do, nowhere to go, and it gets old after a while, I think, just being in eternal nothingness. And so that immaterial spark, the light bearer, you know, consciousness, split the nothingness and created duality. And so now here we are, caught in the devil's bargain, trying to make the best of it. Was it worth it to rebel against God and descend down here into the material world and get on about our weirdness? That question is too loaded for me. I would imagine we wouldn't have done it if it wasn't. And I hope you understand the reference. It's not like I've turned Christian or something. This myth is a metaphor, an allegory for an actual process, I think. And that's what I was referring to. But thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. I have to check out now. But I really do appreciate all of you. And thank you for your support and all of the nice things that you've said. And I will see you guys maybe tomorrow again, soon, for sure. Good night.